Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Belvance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check-In for July 15th, 2020. Running a little behind today, and that's because I've been participating as a delegate in Cloud Field Day 8. Obviously, it's virtual. Cloud Field Day won't be in person for probably a while now, but that's okay because we're cloudy, and we are dealing with it the best way that we can. This has been an interesting beginning to the event because this is my second virtual Tech Field Day event, and they definitely made some changes to improve our experience. And this time they're doing something that was not previously possible. They decided to do two sets of delegates, 12 in the morning or the early team and 12 in the evening or the late team. And that way the presenters could be spread across both of those, and people who live in Europe or the East Coast of the US could be in a time slot that was better for them. And then the rest of us, or I'm not the rest of us, I'm in the early team, but the remainder could be in the late team in a time slot that was more comfortable for them. So it really made sense. Anyway, that's probably enough about that. Today's video is going to be about one of the presenters. It's going to be about Veeam. They did a whole presentation. It was pretty interesting. It's the one that caught my eye today. So that's what I want to talk about. Before I do that, I want to check in with you. How you doing? It's Wednesday around here, midweek. Wednesdays are okay. Feel like things are lagging a little bit. I'm looking forward to the weekend. Got some shore time coming up. Doing a big video game night with my son tomorrow, so that should be exciting as well. So, overall, I would give this day a 6 out of 10, and I hope that you're giving your day a slightly higher rating. I did find out that the tree in my backyard doesn't need to be cut down, so that was a little ray of sunshine, which ironically the tree blocks most of. Good job, tree. Anyway, so let's talk about Veeam. What's going on with Veeam? Okay, so if you're not familiar with Veeam, well, not sure what you're doing watching this, but Veeam, they are a data management company specializing mostly in backup and recovery, and they really cut their teeth in the VMware sphere of things, the vSphere, if you will. They were probably the preeminent backup solution for VMware for a long, long time before more of the traditional backup vendors got the message that this VM thing, it's not going away. Now, in the same way that they cut their teeth on VMware, things have been moving to the cloud. And so Veeam has started on this journey to create backup and recovery tools that are good with the cloud. And so we had a number of presenters in the two and a half hour presentation today. And so let me go through a few of the highlights. Let me pull up the Cloud Field Day notes I took. Okay, so Anthony started out the whole talk. Anthony Spiteri, he started out the whole talk to let us know kind of where Veeam is today. They were recently acquired by investment firm Insight Partners for $5 billion. So good on you, Veeam. $5 billion. That is not chump change. Obviously, Insight sees a lot of value in them, and Insight has a stake in a lot of other prominent technology companies out there. They're not a sort of pump and dump or buy and disassemble or strip for parts or whatever kind of investment firm. They do seem to be focused on software companies and hardware companies that are in the growth mode. And that is certainly where Veeam is at. They've bumped up to 14.2% of the backup and recovery market share, number 3 behind Dell and Veritas, which we had a good laugh on the back channel about Veritas still being one of the biggest backup and recovery vendors out there. And they were Symantec Veritas, and then they spun out in their own company. But a lot of us have had not great experiences with that product, and we were a little surprised it's still so prevalent. But to be completely honest, once a backup system is set up at a company, it's pretty hard to convince them to rip it out. So we talked about kind of where things are today and the things that they're focusing on, which is being simple, and I can attest to that, having set up Veeam in the past. It is very simple to set up, being flexible as a platform, so giving a lot of options and being highly reliable. One of the things that they didn't talk about in their differentiators, but I think this is a big deal, is their relationship with service providers. And we'll get to that in a moment. They talked about their product releases that they've had in 2020, and the cloud ones that were relevant to the conversation were the release of the Azure V1 backup service and V2 of the AWS backup service. No mention of Google Cloud, but I'm sure it's on the roadmap. Also on the roadmap is version 5 of their Office 365 backup product, which is different than the Azure one for reasons that will become obvious shortly. And then version 11 of their Veeam product as a whole is coming out later this year. So that was some interesting just data points for where they stand today. Now, what stood out to me in the conversation? There were 3 things that stood out to me. So David Hill took us through their cloud approach to backing up and restoring systems. And he talked about cloud native. And something that I found very confusing was that he used the term cloud native not to mean what you would traditionally talk about when it comes to cloud native. He didn't mean using the principles of cloud native to create an application that was built largely off of microservices and a decoupled architecture and all that kind of stuff. No, he was talking about the fact that they can use the native cloud tools and APIs in their backup product. So it's not at all what I was thinking. They haven't refactored their software to function in a cloud native way. They still get installed on a Windows Server 2009, and then you install the software on top of that, or you can deploy it kind of as a virtual appliance, but it's still, their software is not taking that cloud native architecture as how it's deploying things. That being said, what they are doing is attempting to help you back up your virtual machines wherever they are. So if they're in Azure, AWS, or on-prem, and then through an open standard backup format, back up those virtual machines and have the ability to replicate that data to other targets and be able to recover that virtual machine in a different cloud provider. That could be pretty big news if you're trying to migrate from AWS to Azure or vice versa, or you need to shift workloads around a little bit. There's some potential wins there. One thing that I would like to see in their product, and I asked about this and it's not there at the moment, is the ability to back up and recover some of the more platform as a service type features. So the ability to back up a DynamoDB table and maybe recover it to a NoSQL table in Google. The ability to back up some other services that exist in AWS today, you know, the S3 buckets and object-based storage, or, you know, their EFS service. Being able to back those things up and restore them to the functional equivalent in other clouds would be huge. No one has that right now, and for all the talk about multi-cloud and hybrid cloud, you really are just finding it's just these balkanized clouds that don't allow for easy transition between them unless you take a higher level abstraction like Kubernetes to be the common platform on top of all these clouds. The second thing that they talked about that I took an interest in, and this is somewhat just selfish of me, is they have this Office 365 backup tool. It can back up Outlook, Exchange Online, it can back up SharePoint, it can back up Teams. Those are all fairly important things, and what was most interesting to me is you can spin it up as a marketplace item in Azure, and there's a community version that is for up to 10 users for free. So you can consume this software up to 10 users for free if you already have Office 365. I don't know if everybody knows this, but you should. Microsoft does not back up any of that stuff for you. If you delete something and it goes beyond the retention period, that data is gone unless you've backed it up somewhere. And since my email's in Office 365 and some of the other stuff I use, my OneDrive and everything, it might not be a bad idea to take advantage of this platform. You still have to pay for storage and you still have to pay for running that appliance, but what you don't have to pay for is the license to use it. So definitely check that out. I think that was really interesting and selfishly something that I was like, oh, I could use that. They've also really expanded the features and functionalities of that backup tool. It's not just backing up Exchange Online. It's now able to do a bunch of things, including multi-tenancy, which brings me to my last point of interest, and that is that they are continuing to expand their CSP program. And so these would be cloud solution providers or managed service providers that want to bundle up Veeam's software, white label it, and offer it to the customers of that MSP or CSP. Veeam has decided, and they've been doing this for 10 years, working with CSPs and MSPs, rather than building their own SaaS offering, their own SaaS service. Instead, they are working closely with all of these different service providers to give them the software and sell them the licenses for them to then sell their services out to their customer base. That is really useful from a couple different perspectives. SaaS can be difficult. You have to sell directly to the customer. You have to have that relationship. You have to figure out that sales motion and marketing. You have to make it seamless and easy to consume. You have to design the front end and the UI correctly. There's a lot that goes into properly offering a SaaS, and usually have to make it really simple because, like t-shirt sizes, because otherwise, customers are going to demand a whole bunch of customizations, and then your product gets really complex. Instead, they've said, we're not going to deal with any of that. Here's our product. It can do all this crazy stuff. You, as the service provider, can offer out whatever subsection of those services makes sense to you, to your customers. We'll just help you by, selling you licenses and giving you the software to do it. And I'm like, wow, I can see how this makes sense financially, and I think this makes it, to tie it all back, a really good investment for Insight partners. I think that was a good idea on them to invest in Veeam, and I think there's going to be a lot of runway going forward. I don't see them being acquired by anybody else. Veeam's definitely in it for the long haul. So those are my thoughts on Veeam from the Cloud Field Day presentations. If you want to watch the live presentation of the whole thing, that will be available on techfieldday.com. I will include a link in the discussion. Tomorrow is Thursdays on the Edge, and I took a briefing earlier this week that was really interesting. So that is going to be my topic, and it's going to be all about how transmitters and receivers are going to impact what's possible at the edge. Could be interesting. Until tomorrow, thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy.